how exactly are the AOT leaks bad? If you guys have seen my last video, you'd know that there are certain feelings I have towards the 8 additional pages.
Come on, look, getting stabsed's not that big a deal. See? Nothing. Boop, 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 boop. No biggie. Boop, boop. I'm fine. See? Few more. Boop, boop, boop.
To me, the 8 additional pages do take a massive dump on the ending of the series. But I do think that I may have quickly glossed over some points that I want to better articulate here. So think of this as a part 2 to that video, a more in-depth breakdown of specifically why I think the Titan tree and the destruction of Paradis creates narrative problems. One word: execution. In my opinion, the execution was It doesn't take Rick and Morty levels of IQ to understand what themes are running through these additional pages. It's that actions have consequences and the cycle of hatred will always continue even if we have stretches of peace in between. I'm not inherently against these concepts because yeah, these have been running themes in the series. But it's all about how you execute these themes which will make or break you. For example, I can stand up on my soapbox and shout all day long about how racism is bad and that there are 2 sides to every story, but how does me preaching to you compare next to this?
確かに俺は海の向こう側にあるもの全てが敵に見えた。そして今、海を渡って敵と同じ屋根の下で敵と同じ飯を食った。ライナー、お前と同じだよ。
You see, one is just me yelling through the microphone, and the other is you experiencing 4 seasons of struggle and heartache to get to this point. It hits different, right? One of the best examples of this is what Isayama did with taking the 4-year time skip and putting us on Marley. I think I read in an interview that he was nervous about this because he wasn't sure how the audience would react and if we would still be there with him if he changed the POV from Eldians on Paradis to the ones on Marley, but for the sake of his story, he had to do it. And thank God he did, right? The whole reason AOT is such a phenomenon is because of Isayama's decision to portray everyone as heroes of their own stories. If we never got to know the Eldians in the internment zone, would we really care about Reiner, GABI, Falco, Peak, and Porco? We already had glimpses that Reiner, Bertolt, and Annie felt awful for what they did to Paradis, but I'll tell you, when I watched these scenes the first time around, I did not care how many crocodile tears they had. I wanted them to burn. We were only viewing their breakdowns from the perspective of the scouts, and it was impossible for the scouts to connect to them without knowing where they had come from. But Isayama giving the lens to Reiner and the Eldians on Marley helped recontextualize all of that and give us a deeper understanding of why they did what they did. If we hadn't switched POVs and kept the stories throughout the eyes of the scouts, do you think the moment where Reiner and his friends broke down the walls would have been anywhere near as impactful? Would we care that he's feeling remorse for everything that he's done? No, we'd probably be more like Floch.
ここにいるのは敵と敵の住む建物だから。俺たち壁内人類がどれだけ壁の外の奴らに殺されてきたか忘れたか。
When the attack on Liberio happened, I want to say the good majority of us were still loyal to the scouts. But the difference is that the feeling wasn't so much as, yeah, let's get the bad guys, as it probably would have been in any other shonen story. We were really given the task of trying to navigate this event from both sides in perspective. And we wouldn't have felt that way if Isayama hadn't switched lenses. So excellent execution, 10 out of 10, would recommend. So let's get to the destruction of Paradis and the Titan tree. In just 2 or 3 pages, these are huge plot continuing themes crammed in such a small space. On a conceptual basis, I am not bothered by the idea that Paradis is receiving consequences for their actions or the existence of the Titan tree. It's the fact that these are crammed in the same chapter as the rest of 139 which makes it impossible for me to take.
Fred, get your money, man. Life goes on. Hopeful. Yes, I am hopeful for today.
I think many of us are forgetting, since we are following the manga month by month, that you are meant to experience this as a whole. Having the destruction of Paradis only a few pages away from Armin and friends being the ambassadors of peace makes a strong implication that they failed. But it was framed in such a way that you had hoped that they wouldn't. It doesn't matter that this happened years after they died, with no context or no explanation. Armin on the boat and the destroyed island is all that we're left with. It doesn't matter if Paradis was attacked for other reasons. The rumbling and the fact that the island's military faction is called the Jaegers were the last major events we saw that could warrant anything like this. We can't just insert headcanon possibilities just because we want these pages to make sense. Again, I'm not inherently against Paradis receiving consequences for what happened. Attack on Titan has always been about actions and consequence, but that's a whole other book to get into. You can't do it in this 1-page panel or a few pages away from Armin's talk no jutsu. Yes, you can say that Armin succeeded because at least he got a century of peace, and that's still something, but that's just something that is told to us, not shown or explored. We don't know how Armin's talks broke down after 80 plus years, and we don't know if it was really the rumbling that was the reason behind the attack, or if it was something else too. Because my guess is, considering the timing, it's not just the rumbling that contributed to this. Because I have to say, for real, why would anyone wait this long? The people that have been actively traumatized by this event are probably dead or close to dying. Just logically speaking, if you're gonna attack, you better do it while the wounds are still fresh and support for this is at its highest. I say this for everyone who likes these extra pages and is going off of the realism argument, because what's more realistic is retaliating way earlier than 80 plus years, especially since you kind of already have the tech for the aircraft. And you'd never be able to galvanize people faster in the military and defense spending than after a worldwide tragedy like that. The same goes for the Titan tree. The only facts that are indisputable about the Titan tree is that it exists and there's a kid with a dog walking up to it, heavily implying that the Age of Titans is about to begin again. Now, due to the lack of dialogue and context, I will just say this is just my interpretation of the Titan tree. My impression is that for better or worse, the curse of the Titans are there to give the Eldians a fighting chance. So after the destruction of Paradis, the need for Titans to return for their survival feels just. So thus comes a kid willingly taking on the Titan powers to save what little he has of his home. Okay, this concept is not necessarily bad. I could genuinely see it working in a sequel, but keyword, sequel. When a story ends, I am of the strong belief that there are things that should be open-ended and other things that should be tied up. In many ways, whether you like the original 139 or not, it accomplishes just that. It gave us the lifting of the Titan curse, it gave us the alliance with a mission to clean up after the devastation that Eren caused, it gave us Paradis' stance on fighting for their right to live, and closure with the characters that we know and love, even if the closure wasn't exactly what we envisioned it would be. So say what you want about not liking it or how hopeful everything was framed, it accomplishes what a finale should accomplish. But the Titan tree opens up a whole new can of worms. It's literally the opening to a new adventure rather than the end to this one. If you say that it's exploring the themes of the cycle of hatred continuing, sir, please, we've already understood that when Armin said it right here, and Isayama had a clear answer to this as he expressed here. Seeing them together like this, the Eldians of Marley, the Eldians of Paradis who worked together to stop the rumbling in the first place, people should be able to see that hope for the future is possible because these wildly two opposing sides that had killed so much of each other managed to put aside their differences and work together. We don't need this additional page alluding to the cycle of hatred because it destroys the entire tone of what Armin is saying. And by the lack of context around Paradis getting destroyed and the discovery of the Titan tree, it effectively takes a big steaming pile of shit on Eren because putting it in the same story where he's willing to go to such lengths to protect his friends and refusing to allow future generations to be subject to the same fate makes it seem like he really accomplished nothing. Like I said, I can understand the plain text version of these events, but put these pages in the beginning of your sequel book if you want to do better in the next generations. Honestly, if Paradis was under attack and someone went willingly into the Titan tree to save what little he had of his home, I might actually pick that up to see how that plays out, especially with the hunch that I have that there are other factors that contributed to this attack. A sequel starting out with that mystery would give people the push to find out what happened in those lost 80 plus years, which could be really compelling. But jamming it into the end of AOT leaves us with a feeling that everything we've experienced is for nothing. I want to stay far away from the rumors that the editor or publisher had something to do with the inclusion of these pages, but it's so hard to imagine the same man who spent so long exploring ideas like this also drew this. And lastly, as my own PSA, I just want to say the AOT fandom needs to stop thinking that they have level 9,000 IQ. I understand it can be frustrating when it feels like people did not interpret the same pages as you did and there's a ton of evidence backing up your claim, while it looks like they just looked at it from a surface level point of view. I actually encountered this a lot when people wanted to shit on ERWIN, saying that all he did was send people to their deaths. But hey, I'm down for a funny meme if you meme about it.
Stop spreading those rumors around. Stop spreading the lies.
But if you come at me seriously thinking that Eren was a 1D badly written character, yes, I will question if we watch the same show. So I get it, I do. It seems like a lot of the AOT fandom in particular has no shortage of people with bad faith takes. I just find it funny how both chapter 139 and the additional pages expose the entire fandom. For those who didn't like 139, it was like, oh, if you didn't like it, you must not have understood it. And then those sides switched up when the additional pages came out and the other side was now saying like, oh, if you didn't like it, you didn't understand it. I guess we're not meant to understand anything. What hurts the most is that we know that Isayama is capable of exploring these concepts, but for the sake of ending it at 139 and a potential sequel waiting in the wings, this is what became of it. Thanks for watching to the end of this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. I hope this further explains why I found these pages to be so problematic, because looking at my previous video, I felt like I did go over this point kind of quickly. Because I can't exactly disagree with you guys who do see that it could happen. I just thought the execution was just not there. So that's what I'm left with. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you in the next video.
Are you that mentally enslaved and intellectually subservient and intellectually molested and ideologically molested